Good evening, everyone.
Welcome everybody to the show.
We're still working out
We're
our
still
our
working this, guys.
teammate stuff, but because we're Craig was out purchasing some new technology to up level the show even more,
Yes.
and I won't be far behind him. But anyway, welcome to episode number 126 of Into the Outer Realms. But this is our subset special series, and that's what we want to focus on. It's number 2. But I was thinking, really, Craig, not to confuse things, but you and I months ago, we did an episode on this show where we looked at alien abductions and hybridization and all. So that was kind of the unofficial, that was sort of the seed, the prequel.
So this is technically 3.
Yeah, so this is in a way the third. And then you guys might be saying, before I turn it over to Craig for an introduction of the Voynich manuscript, because we're going to skip the Into the Outer Realms. We're working on a new opening just for Sinister Mysteries. So we're going to use this time. And so I was thinking, I was getting ready before the show, and I was like, man, is the Voynich manuscript really a sinister mystery? So I went back to what I know of my Latin. And sinister is actually from the Latin sinistre for left-handed, because the devil was believed to be a southpaw. I was trying to think if that comes up in Charlie Daniels' Devil Went Down to Georgia or not, that he's left-handed. And it might be.
That I'm not sure.
Yeah. But it's also is an ominous foreshadowing of some unfavorable turn of events. Now, here's the real wicked thing about the Voynich manuscript. Terence McKenna, the great thinker, the philosopher, scientist, said that it is a truly occult book because no one can read it. So it's the ultimate in obscure, right? Which is all occult means, is like hidden knowledge. So we don't know. Does it portend? I mean, it does have astrology in it.
Yeah, and kind of like that thing, it's like one of those things doesn't seem to be anything when you're dealing in the paranormal community. If it's a mystery and it seems seems like unsolved, it has to be something on either the angelic or the demonic. It just that's the natural, seems to be the natural thing. It's like when you're doing a ghost investigation, if it's something you're not unsure, I'm pretty sure it's a demon. How do you know it's a demon? It's like, it doesn't have to be a demon every time you don't know what it is.
Now, I have to say, and this, I guess, is a teaser, but it's something we're definitely going to talk about. So the devil, left-handed, people who were left-handed in medieval times when this was first created, right, in the 1400s, left-handed people were suspected of practicing witchcraft. So it is a book of, if you look at witchcraft, but not in a devil sort of way, but the botany, the remedies. There's one tiny piece that seems to be a legitimate translation, and it's a cure using goat liver paste. So it is perhaps some kind of handbook.
I mean, there is possible, like I said, just all my joking aside, it is possible. I mean, like I said, it could possibly be a demonic script. It could be, I mean, it's like, it could be something like a handbook. I mean, we don't, that's the coolest part about it, is we don't know what it actually is.
But my intuition, my intuition is, if it was anything, it might be angelic or extraterrestrial perhaps in part. And so we're going to talk about that. So like I said, no, we're not going to go away, do the Into the Outer Realms. Let's say hi to everyone in the comments. And then Craig actually brought this to me. So I want to know, like, when did you find out about this? What really hooked you? And then we'll go on from there. But let's go out to the comments.
Yeah.
Let's see. Lori's here and Michael's here. Spiritual Alchemy Energy Transfigurations. That's Julie. Hi, Julie. Jessica's here. Ronald's here. Tanya made it. Hi, Tanya. This is a good time to tease out that on September 8th, Tanya and Lori are making a return to the show.
Nice.
And they're going to be doing readings. Tanya's going to do her card readings, and then Lori is going to do the numerology behind the cards. So you guys are getting a double dose of readings. September 8th, my mom's birthday. I think that's going to be a big day. That's going to be a big day. So where else are we? Ronald is here, and Ciel and Michael. Ciel and Michael, that is October 6th. We're going to talk about the shadow. So the week before, nice. I'm going to do archetypes. And part of that is the shadow. Even in tarot readings where the card is kind of turned upside down, some people use that, and it's sort of the reverse or shadow mean. So that's going to be very cool. And let's see. Ramona's here. Hi, Ramona. And Connor. Hello.
Connor's here.
Angelina and Laura. Hi. So this is awesome. Great gang tonight already coming out of the gates. Thank you all for coming. So, Craig, when were you introduced to the Voynich manuscript, and what sucked you in?
A few years ago, I actually, I'd known a little bit about it. What really reintroduced me is I actually have another podcast I really like. I don't know, it's Sofa King podcast. It was they did an episode on it, and it was just that kind of rekindle the thing. And I started looking into it, and it was kind of, I think it was like the whole package in one. I've always been interested in codes. I've always liked, when you're growing up, Pig Latin, most people did the Pig Latin thing, did this stuff. Some people did the writing with lemon juice, doing this, so
Yeah.
Everybody kind of experiment in some fashion as they're growing up. And so
decoder rings.
Yep. And so this one, so, I used to really like, I haven't done it so much lately, but I used to really like to solve like codes, like one where you'd have to figure out the ciphers. You'd have to figure out how, once you figure out the placement of these things, then you can solve, okay, well, this is what should be an E. This is, and you do these things. Well, that's where, when you get into this thing, like I said, we'll show different pictures for people. But this book, as people can see, it is random pictures, of plants that somewhat resemble ones that can be found out there, but they have alterations, and it's a complete language that is unknown. It's one of the, I think there's several that are listed out they're listed out there. They're an unknown language that, nobody knows how to solve. It's kind of like Egyptian. If we didn't get the Rosetta Stone, there's a good chance that we still would not know what these hieroglyphs even stand for. And so it would be in that same thing. It's like, who was this culture that had these weird drew all these weird pictures? It's like, everybody would be speculating. We may be talking about that this was, their recipe for how to bake bread, when it's actually talking about the afterlife, and that's, we'll get into some of the theories on these ones, but yeah, it's always been a passion.
Yeah, there's a whole section in the back, 22 folios that they call the recipes, but they don't know if they're recipes. Because it's all text and they're split up by little stars. Ramona says she was a cryptology analyst. So Ramona, I almost became a cryptologist in the United States Navy. That was not my fate to do that, but I came close twice. My father worked for the Naval Security Group. He was involved with the SOSUS tracking during the Vietnam War with Russia, was involved in some other things, but he was a cryptographer. So
oh, wow.
What's very interesting is, from owners of this book, going back to the 1500s, straight through to the minds that have tried to tackle this book, they are big names, well-connected people. So it must mean something more than just a clever puzzle, I think.
Yeah, and that was one, kind of, since you did there, well, I guess we can just branch off of that. I don't know what you found through your research, but when I was looking into it, one of the possible people that that is potentially accredited to for creation is Roger Bacon.
Yes,
is one of the ones that is been set aside as like, this is the possible one, because some of the people through the handling of this, through Rudolph II, the Holy Roman Emperor, he had connections through through Bacon, and there's these ones. So there's a lot of these interconnection of this group. And before the show, we were talking about it. Correct me if I'm saying it wrong. I want to say it's a polymath. It looks like polymath.
Yeah.
So it's either polymath or poly. But for anybody that doesn't know, layman's things, the Renaissance man, but it's basically anybody who has an extensive knowledge in a vast number of subjects.
Right.
And it's not just like, ooh, I remember it's like, no, you can literally teach a master's course in multiple fields, because you are just, and these people, Leonardo da Vinci, Roger Bacon, these were guys were all kind of in that same thing. And this is one of those where there's a really good chance that not only could one of these guys have created it, there's also, these would have been the people that would have given it to other people that would have appreciated it. And that's where it kind of branches off. And then as we go, we'll get into the people that it fell into, the hands it fell into to modern day, where it's now in me and Joey's hand in this book.
And it was amazing. You all know that I'm doing a sort of a meta universe series called the Stanton Chronicles, and my 4 books and the Cat and the Quill, the 4th book's coming out in October. Craig, my eyes were lighting up. There are lots of editions, but Craig and I got this one. It's from 2017, forward by Dr. Steven Skinner. I think that the facsimiles are clear. They're beautiful. The folios, I love the folios that are numerous pages that are fold out. I'm going to try, I think they're a little later in the cosmological, and the way they lay them out for us. I also love, too, their facsimile, so you can see pages to come behind the pages. I mean, they're just great photographs. Yeah, there it is. They call that the Rosetta, I believe. Or the Rosettes. The Rosettes, I guess they call it.
Yeah, the Rosettes. Yep.
Yeah, so...
And that's the cool thing about this book is if you actually look, too, it's kind of on the bottom, you can see they kind of show where, it's right here, sorry, they show where it's placed in the book. And then on this page, I'll zoom in a little bit further, they actually show you where it's layout on the book, how it sits. So you can actually, since even though you're not physically holding it, they show you the literal positioning and the where it would be located on this book. And then those foldouts, like that foldout, that's where it varies. So they say up to about 240 pages, and they think that there's possibly even up to 32 pages that might be missing from this work.
And that's what Lori was just saying. And they don't know that all of the pages are in the right order either, because it went through rebinding. The Jesuits had it for a while. They're the ones who supposedly put the cover on it. If the theory is that I saw is 356 days in the year, am I correct? I've been up for 38 straight hours, folks. So yes. I had quite an odyssey getting home from California yesterday and today. But if you take the number of existing pages and you take the theory of where the missing pages are, and that has to do with some cosmological things that are missing, so on and so forth, it equals to 1 page for every day of the year, which is interesting theory.
Yeah. It's really amazing. And it's, when you look at it, it's the actual size of the book really isn't much bigger than your standard paperback.
Yeah, it's 9.65. Yeah. Yep. And 9.6 is the absolute Amazon standard. That's what most books are done in 9.6. I do all my books in 9.6. Great.
Yeah.
Point.
And so, most people, like I said, when you're getting, and then because people are thinking it's like this book is actually bigger than the actual manuscript. The pictures you're seeing, those are the actual size of the book.
Yeah.
And so that was one of the things that this probably the most interesting is, we'll get into it as we go. They're just the different sections that we get in, the stuff that's in this book. For all intents and purposes, it doesn't make sense when you look at the book, because it doesn't follow a logical progression. It doesn't show because even though they say it's divided into sections, it really isn't, because you've got all these plants and stuff, plus then you've got all the naked ladies and the green pools mixed around. I mean, there's just all this stuff that doesn't, it's one of those, it's almost just like it was a journal that just as you're taking notes and you're just following along.
Yeah. Yeah. And so 9.6 inches, the parchment is made of calfskin. They've done some carbon dating. They originally thought it was in the 1500s, but then they said, no, it was in the 1400s. And they agree on that.
1404 to 1438 is the window, I think, that they
absolutely thought. Yep. And probably Germanic and Northern Italian. That's interesting because another polymath who I love, and I was going to do my graduate work on him, was Goethe. Goethe, who was a
Mhm.
systems theorist and a politician, a theater writer, a playwright, definitely a man after my own heart. So there's that Germanic Italian, which is really that Holy Roman Emperor, that whole empire, the Habsburgs, all of
Yep.
that. So you have, it's been attributed to Da Vinci, to Dr. John Dee, to Roger Bacon. November 3rd, tune in for Sinister Mysteries. That will be our fifth. That'll be our fifth Sinister Mystery, where Craig and I are going to talk about Roger Bacon.
Yes.
Because these men are fascinating. They were the power behind the throne. Queen Elizabeth, the British Empire was really based on occult fortune telling. Mary, Queen of Scots. They were all into this stuff.
Oh, I'm dying when we talk about it. It's like, for just kind of a teaser, Roger Bacon's brazen head. It was like an early version of, the great, it was a Zoltron. It just, you have the, or Zoltron. I can't, the name's failing me on that one, but it's that one where you put your money in there and it says, I shall protect your, Zoltan. Yeah. And it was like an early version of that. I mean, smoke and stuff coming out of here. And it's really fascinating.
Yeah. Ramona, I would take the LOL off the end of your comment because it may be a women's health book, at least in part, because you have the cosmological moon cycles. They have the what they call the balneological section, goes back to these medieval Jewish. So there's a heavy Jewish influence on the book. These bathing rituals, and sometimes it looks like they're bathing in intestines, but it could be pipe systems and the way they would draw out the dirty water. So if a woman, was on her moon, had a baby, was exposed to death, she would have to do this ritual bathing. Yeah, it's very interesting, and it goes on and on and on.
As you can see, just in the different things, there's just all these just interesting drawings, and it's just, what is the significance of all the naked women?
Yeah,
because I've heard something like pregnancy stuff, but this, I think I'm trying to remember the term. Is it Rubenesque? Is that what that is? That the term? Yeah. So and that was during medieval times. That's how women were portrayed. That was the beauty standard. I mean, it's not a natural thing like what we have modern days, where you've got to be a size 0, and you're as wide as this bottle. The actual Renaissance type thing. Beauty was in the female body that had curves. That was considered the epitome of beauty. I mean, it was just, and that's, so that makes it. So I don't know if I buy that they're all pregnant, just based on the pictures, as opposed to whoever was from that period. That's how you would have drawn a woman, is in the Rubenesque, style.
Right. And Ramona, you could have been a co-host on this show, so keep chiming in. She says it does seem like abbreviation of Latin medical words, and that is one of the prevalent theories, that it is, that it's simply a shorthand. It's a shorthand, and we don't have any kind of shorthand, any kind of cipher is only as good as the key. So when the key gets lost, we're all, like you said, Craig, the Rosetta Stone for the Egyptian. Interestingly enough, a man who was the owner for a while of the Voynich manuscript is called the father of Coptic and Sino research. He went and took the hieroglyphics of the Egyptians and said, I solved it, and it turned out he did it. Lori says here, it's interesting how childlike the women are drawn, while the botanicals are more precise. That's interesting. I really think that the artist comes into question with a lot of this researchers. Was this just like his lizards sort of look like deformed, like pig creatures, and and that's a bad artist.
It's one of my favorite artists. He goes by the moniker the Oatmeal. He always makes fun of the people that can't draw hands. And it's one of those things, because some people, and that's where I wondered, is one of those, especially like artists. It's like me, I can draw, like I did our logo, for the RTC.
Right.
I can do a literal, using geometry. I can do those things like crazy. But when it comes to drawing like an actual figure, like a person, it looks like, I feel like I'm a 5th grader trying to do these drawings. I don't feel like it looks anything like it. And so I often wondered, was botany whoever did the illustrations, was botany their thing. That was what they excel at. And then doing like figures, that's why it has more of the cartoony, distorted look to them in that way. So that was one of the things through my research. I wondered if maybe that was the case. It was cool that they brought that up, because that was exactly one of the things I had down.
Yeah, it also tells you what the emphasis is. So the botany you need to get right, even though one woman claimed, and I was telling you this, Craig, and then I dove deeper. One woman claimed to have solved almost all of them, but a lot of them are disputed. I think I'm looking at my notes here. I have so many notes. What are there? 240 illustrations of plants, and they think maybe 14 to 24. They're like, yeah, this is definitely this, and this is definitely that. I think also too, it's interesting. They say somewhere between 20 and 30 characters. So it's pretty close to the English language. And some of the cryptographers and some of the decoders have said, yeah, this stands up to clusters, the way language functions. And other people say, oh, no. The tightness of the sequences is way different. And that leads us to believe that it's a code maybe within a code. So
yeah, Lori made a great point there too. I don't know if you saw that. That was one of the things. That's one of the beauties. That's what makes me think that it's one of those people along the lines of Da Vinci.
Yeah.
And possibly Roger Bacon, is that she hit on it right now. That's one of the things for instance where I really like the idea that it was somebody around that, like the Roger Bacon, somebody that might have been the creator, because that's one of those things. If you've seen somebody that does a masterpiece, I mean, anybody who's watched like a modern thing, the guy that does a painting, he's doing all these paintings, it just looks like random, flips it over, it's upside down, and it's the image of Elvis or some other act,
right.
And you're like, holy cow, at no point did they ever go, oh yeah, that's not right. They were just doing it without even really thinking about it. And so you wonder if it's just one of those things, you see it in your head, and at no point are you ever going to make a mistake. You're just going to go.
I actually go with the alternate explanation that it was a copy, that this was a finished product of previous iterations.
Definitely could have been.
Yeah. But we
don't
know. Yeah. Right. We don't know, because take Mozart. Mozart saw the music in his head, and when he put it down on paper, it was coming down onto the paper for the first time. Exact. Perfect. No mistakes. So it's not without precedent. I just kind of lean on the fact that not only was it a copy, but they detect two different hands. So it may not have been just one author. It might have been two. So they detect two different hands.
It'd be crazy.
There's a technical name for handwriting analysts. Yeah. And the other thing that I want to say, and like I said, folks, I apologize. I literally have been up for 40 hours now straight. So that's, no punctuation, as Lori said as well. And then the colorization, they believe, came later. And they put a lot of crap. They put a lot of crap on the colorization. I don't mind it. It doesn't look particularly amateurish to me.
No, and and even the stuff like you talked about the cover, they think that their original, like one of the original covers of it might have been wood.
Yeah,
because they think some of the pages, if it's folded the way it's supposed to be, because that's one of the things, it's folded, but we don't know if that was the original intention of how it's folded. Right. But there's appears to be insect holes on the bottom and the the top, what they call of the thing.
I think that's. But it's interesting if someone went later and sort of enhanced it. So it was a work in progress. That's really what they were trying to figure out. There may be a few notes. There's a phrase in German that may have been added later. And so the attributions were Bacon, possibly Da Vinci, John Dee. But then people came and said, no. He put little ladders. Like he has little codes that he used in the margins, and his codes aren't there, and it's not his handwriting. Now, Julie asked about light language, and it could very well be. There was a theory that John Dee and a partner of his, they were working with angelic language. And so a study was made. Now, there is no correlation between their angelic language and this, but there could be different dialects. There could be different angelic languages. Swedenborg was channeling angels. And if he wrote that down, that may have looked different. Like, I don't believe that there's one definitive angelic script. Do you know what I mean? Anymore that there's one definitive extraterrestrial script, because there isn't.
Yeah, and kind of when you said that in the beginning too about extraterrestrial. I mean, that's even one of the theories that it might have been either time traveler, it might have been somebody from another, that this was their journal.
Yeah.
And they were just simply writing it, and it, it was crazy. It would be misplaced it, and it was discovered by somebody and stashed away. And that's why, because in those things, this was that might have been why they would notate all of these plants that they would discover. Right. And these things, but it's also somebody that could really have been into botany, and like they said, it was like Health Journal, and they were talking about, well, this has this benefit, and that page could be talking about the benefits that are provided by this plant and what it does. I mean, that is definitely a very good possibility.
The audience is with us. So, Charles, I agree with Ronald. I went back and looked. The link to the free manuscript isn't there, but folks, it's pretty easy. It's www.voynich, voynich.nu is the definitive website of all the aggregate research and the copies of the pages. So, Charles, I don't know if that was the same thing, but let's stay with the audience here. Like Lori said, some of it's been touched up. It's been repainted. There's also there's a technical name for that when you paint over an existing piece. So that further confounds things. Julie asks, could it be Enochian? Yeah, that's what D was writing in Enochian script. So were the Egyptians, right? Grimoire or alchemy. Yes, Jessica, those are theories as well. Maybe he just copied the works of Marianne North or Sabine Berthelot from their books. They have found, I don't recall those two names, but some scholars have said, yes, this looks exactly like a plant that's in so-and-so's book of botany, or this kind of thing. So could very well be.
Yeah, I'll tell you, this subject really took me down a rabbit hole of different subjects I need to look into.
Yeah.
Athanasius Kircher, I think is how you say his name. His Wunderkammer, the Cabinet of Curiosities.
Yeah.
That one really, looked into that thing. It's just some of these people, they had these, it would be like Ripley's Believe It or Not type thing, for people to come see. So this manuscript and other ones like it would have been definitely sought after.
Yeah.
So could it have been a forgery that was just created as in like, who cool, like, everybody's going to see this thing. That's one of the possibilities for these things. But it just, the fact that it was secreted away to the Jesuit college, I think it's Frascati. It's just, and that's where later it was discovered by Wilfrid, Voynich.
Yeah.
And that's where, like I said, that's where, to me, if anybody that's done this for a while, anytime you start getting the Vatican involved, there's something legitimate to an item.
Right.
They don't just grab stuff to just, because, hey, it looks cool.
Right. And it's not just the Vatican, it's the Jesuits who, since I was a kid growing up in the Catholic Church and knowing Jesuits, a Jesuit it does not just become a priest. They have to take on a profession. Psychology, or I knew one that was a psychologist, but he also conducted an orchestra. So the Jesuits are interesting. The head of the Jesuits, the general superior, is also called the Black Pope. Yep. So there was all this animosity. Same way with the Templars, which you and I are doing on October 13th, that auspicious date for the Templars. When a group that's operating within the church, the Roman Catholic Church, that is, starts to supersede the church, bad things happen to them. Yep. So there was all this. So let's go through this really quickly. And again, you'll have to look up all the names and stuff yourselves, folks. So if it was, say it was finished by 1438, well, the original records are about 140 years later. Yeah, there you go. And here's mine.
Yeah, I got a little
4
list of the
pages
names
of
there.
it. But here you go. You got the Jesuits. You got people who study herbal pharmacy. You have people that were ennobled by emperors. This one man, Emperor Matthias, gives this guy Jacob Horkiki. That guy was arrested by Protestant rebels. So, like I was talking
Mhm.
about in my pirate show in California the other day, and often talk about this Protestant Catholic thing. So, when the Protestants and Catholics are struggling over these people and over these objects, I don't believe for a second this is just gibberish and some kind of BS forgery. Too much effort was put into this thing. Don't you agree, Craig?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's
Yeah.
definitely. And I was just looking at the comment. Yeah, Lori. Yeah, it's one of those. We've tossed around that idea that you said if we get the thing for Patreon or an insider type thing, yeah, this type of stuff will be, this will be scanned, and that'll be some of the stuff that we'd probably make available to everybody, so you can see
Oh,
personally see our
yeah,
notes.
right on. I mixed up Laura and Lori, but what Lori's saying here too, that it's a piece of art and some needed dollars produced for a commission.
That's where the Athanasius Kircher part comes in, because he picked
Yeah,
it up from that Jacob I said Horsiki
yeah,
Sinopius after he was ennobled by Emperor Rudolph.
right.
He had it, and then because like you said, he had that cabinet of curiosities, so he's looking for this stuff. So that's a definite possibility that it was a commissioned piece
Yeah,
for for that purpose, because everybody knows during that time there's a huge market for fake holy relics.
yeah,
So there was massive market for people creating this stuff. So the ink, the paper stuff would not have been hard to come by somebody that was involved in that trade, because everybody's going to want, this is a piece of a scroll that Jesus held, and now it's in a church and everybody's giving their gold, and that's exactly what they were after.
yeah. Let's see here. Herbalists. Herbalists were considered heretics during certain periods of time when they were advancing science. Absolutely. I'm deep diving into the Cathars. There's a possible Cathar connection, that this is the last surviving coded manuscript of the Cathars. So that's the whole Albigensian heresy and the annihilation of them. And so, what does Charles say here? In that era, I'm surprised that it was so well known but not burned. Right, just the fact that it survived, but there were a lot of people protecting it. This guy, Johannes Marcus Marci, he was a professor at a university. He was the head physician of the Kingdom of Bohemia, and he was personal physician to 2 Holy Roman emperors. So these are powerful people. It wasn't just schlumps that had this. Again, Jesuits are brokering deals as this thing changes hands. A really interesting guy.
Peter Beck was one of the Jesuits, and he was the 22nd Superior General of the Society of Jesus in 1853.
Yeah.
So
yeah, and just prior to him, Dr. Raphael, he came up with the Bacon theory, and the Roger Bacon theory survived as late as 1912 or 1915. It was talked about at the Art Institute of Chicago exhibition in 1915. So that was only 100 years ago. They were still attributing it to Roger Bacon. Alchemists, like Jessica said, there were alchemists involved in this. Kircher, when he died in 1680, that the man that you were talking about, it became part of the Jesuit Collegium Romanum. Yeah. And then the Italians confiscated the library. Yeah, there he is, Beck's. Very interesting.
Yeah, I wasn't sure how to pronounce it with the X. That was one of those sites like Beck, because it was easier. But yeah, it's because we kind of hit on it a couple of times. I mean, that's one of those things. There's even some modern people that are actually trying to ID things, and they even have some that even now they still cannot identify these plants,
right?
Which is been one of the things that these are from an alien world. These don't exist in our plane. Right. But there's also ones where it's artistic liberties. Like you drew it how you saw it. Because I mean, you look at some of the ones like I did on banner, the one that's behind me. I mean, you can even make a case that that's possibly could be a sunflower.
Yeah.
Or some type seed, because but it's also could be something completely foreign.
Right.
It was an artist's rendition of it. So
and think of it this way. So you use a code or you use some kind of shorthand that we don't have the cipher. Maybe it's like a card and grill or a simple substitution, mirror writing. There are all these different theories that we'll get into when we get into the people who have tried to decipher it. But what would be the point of having all the text in code if the plants were readily identifiable? So that's a theory too.
Mm-hmm.
Here are basic parts of plants, but when you take the coded text and you decipher it, then you know what it is. I think, the botany, like you were talking about, that's what the artists did. Because parts of those plants show up throughout the book. There's this one plant that I love, and you have it down on the left there. As people are facing the screen, it's back behind there. But folks, you could go look at the banner. That shows up on 4 or 5 different pages. It's in the cosmology part, and it's in the Baleontological part. And then the whole section that is what they think the herbal remedies are just parts and pieces of these plants. So here's a
it definitely
from
could.
this. Here's
definitely could be
from that. Yeah. So it's so precise. So
there it is.
Yeah.
There it is.
Yeah, that's the one that shows up throughout the book. And it's very interesting. It's pod-like. It's like a little encapsulated universe. It's the same shape as the Vivica Pessis or the Yanni. So you're talking about sacred geometry there. The number of circles may mean something. That may be a code within itself. I'm kind of spitballing here, but
that's the beauty of this mystery is that there's so many things. I mean, we literally have something that we don't have the Rosetta Stone.
Right.
We don't have that key, because anybody that's done it, deciphering, anybody that's done the cryptology, you've got to find that one piece that kind of starts to break it in, and nobody's found that piece yet. Right. And that's the beauty, the kind of the beauty of this mystery is this, even if it is just an herbal journal, it's still really fascinating how they went about and they crafted this.
Yeah.
I mean, we talked about before the show, there's even the theory that it's to be read backwards through a mirror.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so there's a lot, to go into. I mean, I said, we just got into just the owners.
Right.
I mean, it's currently held at the, I think it's a Beinecke. I think it's how
Beinecke, Yale
Library in Yale. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, which is where it wound up there under circumstances that are a little shady to me. So as we're working our before we get to the cryptographers, we'll keep our working right. But Ramona put a lengthy thing here, which I'm not going to put up, but you guys can go after the show and read this in the threads. That the scientific revolution began with Copernicus in 1543. Well, this manuscript predates Copernicus by up to 140 years.
Mm-hmm.
If you go with the earliest date. So that's there's definitely alchemy here. I mean, I've studied a lot Paracelsus and it's definitely there. Definitely everything is numbers, and it could be an alphanumeric code, right? Like you name a cryptographic design and they've tested this with it. An accepted cipher going way, way, way back, and the ones that I incorporate into my stories. So maybe either extinct, altered. In some cases, they say the root system is from one plant, the stem system is from another plant, the petal, the stamen and the pistil are from another plant, the petals are from another. So you have this weird hybridization going on, which is interesting. Because when someone comes, like this woman, Edith Greenfield, I believe her name was, and said, I identified all the plants, it's easy to go, no, you didn't. No, you didn't. So that's why I think the parts of the plants are more important than the plant itself. The uses of the individual pieces of these plants, which would absolutely be heretical knowledge outside the system. It would be witchcraft. You know, so yeah, it's very interesting. People are learning a lot. That's really good.
Yeah, and kind of just continue with that. It was one of those, because that was part I even looked to where, you know, she and other people have done the identification. But if you look at the plant that they say that this is, it doesn't look anything like the picture.
Yeah.
You'll get some of these that are like, this is the plant. I'm like, it doesn't even look close to what they drew. I mean, this one looks like the star-shaped leaves, and then you've got this other one with these straight leaves, and that's the one that you're saying is the same exact thing. And I'm like, I mean, okay, it may have the basic, like, stalk structure, but the leaves aren't the same. The flowers aren't the same. I go, this isn't, I mean, either they just completely artistic rendition of this thing, or what you've identified it at isn't quite correct. And that's what I said. And I've noticed that on quite a few.
Yeah. Tanya says, to me, the uses are more important. Laura says the same thing. Each part plays a healing part. That seems to be where the total picture of the interaction of all this stuff. Because if you look at the root systems, they're very similar to the drainage and piping systems in the bathing women section. So it all seems to be encoded. It's a multi-level message, and I think that's what really has gotten the cryptographers. So let's get through the ownership here. We're to almost 1900. So Voynich gets it. Wilfred Michael Voynich, and he also has an alternate name. But he's born in 1860s, blah, blah, blah. He was an anarchist. Rebel activities. Remember the Protestant rebels. So these are guys that are trafficking in knowledge, trafficking in political ideas, philosophical ideas that are dangerous. He gets sent to Siberia, this dude. And he escapes, which not too many people escape from Siberia. So did he have help? Was it the Jesuits? Where these other powerful people come in to help it? Like, how the hell do you escape from Siberia? So he was there for 3 years. And his wife was a member of the Polish Socialist Party. So more rebels, more subversives. Very, very interesting. He becomes a book dealer. Now, that's an interesting thing. A rebel, an anarchist, all of a sudden becomes an expert in dealer in rare books. So did he meet someone in Siberia that then helped him get out? Like,
possibly.
Yeah, because if you've ever seen The Ninth Gate with Johnny Depp and Frank Langella, I don't know if we're supposed to talk about Frank Langella. He's canceled now, but I love Frank Langella. Yeah, mumbo jumbo. That's a highly, highly specialized business. Talk about a polymath. You got to be a polymath to be a rare book dealer.
Oh yeah, because I mean, it's just like anything. It's just you think about all this stuff that you have to be able to identify to determine whether it's a forgery or the real thing. Yeah.
You need to know languages. Oh, look, it's one of the Beards showed up to support his brother. Hey, Chris.
What's happening?
This might be a first. That's nice. What does Miss Tanya say here? Exactly what I was going to ask. How do you escape from Siberia? With help. Because there's so many powerful people hooked in here. The only thing I know for sure is this isn't gibberish, and it's not some kind of forgery. I believe that. I mean, so then a guy takes it on a lecture tour, blah, blah, blah. Voynich dies. Okay, here. He leaves it to his wife. His wife leaves it to her best friend. Her best friend sells it to another book dealer, a guy named Hans P. Krauss. He pays $24,500 for it in the 1960s. It's a pretty good chunk of change. $24,500, not chump change in the 1960s.
Yep.
He turns around and he tries to sell it for $160,000. Buy it for 24.5. Try to sell it for 160. Nobody will buy it for a decade, so he gives it to Yale. He doesn't even get his 24 grand back. That's weird to me. That's weird to me, brother.
It speaks of there was probably something under the table that was done, not on the books. Yeah,
Yeah.
because as I remember the original, it's like in the kind of the cost. The original, one of the things is they think John Dee was the one that gave it to Emperor Rudolph II,
Right.
for the sale of, at that time, I think it was 600 gold ducats, which in today's dollars, based off gold price, would be the equivalent of 82,800,
Yeah.
and that was back in the 1500s.
Yeah. That's big
And
money.
yeah, and so that was quite a sum. So obviously, I mean, when you're an emperor, money is not an option. You just buy whatever. But still, it's like these people that are high. There's one of the comments on YouTube was talking about it too. It's just like, how do they avoid prosecution, or getting the burning? Well, that's when you're part of the elite, you're above the Spanish Inquisition does not visit you. They don't go to the power
Right.
the power ones, and that's where this tome, this codex, seems to have been residing, is in the ones that had the power, and so they're above reproach.
Yeah.
So I mean, because what was it, King Henry? I think even during all the time of lopping off the heads, he
Yeah.
had witchcraft and stuff in his court. He did all this stuff, even though he's going around accusing people of being a witch and lopping
Right.
off the heads.
Right.
Don't do as I do as I say.
Yeah, and Mary Queen of Scots and Queen Elizabeth and John Dee, he crossed that. All of these men were in peril. Walter Raleigh, we have to put in here too. Craig, we talked about maybe my coming on Three Beards. We should look at Bacon and Dee, Raleigh. These men who were very powerful, but they were in very precarious positions. And then there were playwrights, Christopher Marlowe, who was stabbed under very strange circumstances. And they called themselves the Atheist Club. And in one of the Canon and the Quill books, I say men who are polymaths like this, men who are true Renaissance men, don't believe in nothing.
No,
That's a silly thing. So the fact that they call them the Atheist Club was some kind of cover for what was really going on. And this manuscript, even if it wasn't written by Bacon or Dee, or one of the key guys in these sort of secret clubs, because then you start to get into the Priory of Zion and Holy Blood, Holy Grail, and it gets crazy. So Miss Tanya says, 25K in the 60s, that was about $250,000. So if he was trying to turn it around for 160K, do the math, folks. He was trying to sell this thing for about $3 or $4 million. Yeah, in today's money. There you go. The School of Night, all of those kinds of things. I find it very interesting when you talk about the elite. People fall out of grace and power, and they're unseated. It happens all the time. It's happening right now in our political landscape. They just booted Liz Cheney out. I think a very good example is Andrew Cuomo up in New York. Yeah, they didn't count the healthcare, the nursing home deaths, but it was a lot more than that. It's about when you're trying to next level into that elite, it makes you very precarious. So this
you're either
still
part of it or you're not.
Yeah, and you might be part of it, and you piss off the wrong people, or you supersede the next in line, right? Because Craig, there are theories about there was a new world order plan, and Putin and Trump got into it because they wanted to be the head of the most powerful region. Each one of them did. That's a thing that's going on kind of under the surface. And also Hillary Clinton and Trump upsetting her. That wasn't the plan. No. So there was kind of a spoiler there. And did Hillary step out of line? And some things were made. So this is not 1500s. This is now.
And that's one of those things where you have this stuff where this just seems to be like one of the pieces. It's so you said this is every now and then you get, because that's one of the things. I mean, it's just kind of set all that aside real quick. That's one of the things I always would want, like a dream. Who doesn't want to see like what the old school families have in their collections? Because there's a billionaire that was just rated that had all these artifacts that were obtained illegally, and so he had to give them up. But it was just, you just think it's like, what, like James Bond villain, somebody's got this statue that nobody's ever seen. It's one that Da Vinci carved, or just Michelangelo. It's something nobody's ever seen, and it's just sitting in his bathroom. Every morning when he's in there washing his hands, he's looking at some priceless artifact that nobody's ever seen before. And it's just like those cabinet of curiosities. How many more things like this are in the Vatican vault?
Oh yeah,
that we haven't seen.
Yeah.
It just, that was a little caveat, like I said, that's always been the what if, like, dream, like, oh man, if I could just, everybody's like, I would travel here. I'm like, no, I want full access to the Vatican. I just want to see it, and be able to just like process everything that's there.
Right. But don't go to the Secreto Archivo Apologica or however you say it in Italian, the secret Vatican archives, because they're very public archives now. The secret archives, we don't know the name or location of where those archives are.
Yeah. I'd love to see it. I would love it.
So Tanya says, and we're going into the broader branches of where Craig and I are headed with all this, which I love. New World Order, I think, has been changed by the disinformation age. Now they're just trying to roll with numbers, if that makes sense. Yeah. I mean, the first time that Joe Biden says New World Order, it loses the power of what it was meant when George Bush the first kind of said it. I do believe that. Well, the co-optation of music, right? You took slave music and you turned it into white jazz, right? And then hip hop was co-opted. So anything that's a language, a code of its own. So when for whatever reason, why George Bush the first trotted out New World Order, maybe to test it, all his guys, Cheney and all of those guys, were testing out all this stuff. And I don't want to go too far afield, but then when it trickles down to Joe Biden going a new world order, it doesn't mean what it means.
I think it's a magician's
I think
hand.
Tanya's right there. Yeah, absolutely. And coming out of his mouth, it's easy to dismiss it.
Yeah, it just makes it just where like, oh yeah, that's
there you go. Vatican vaults, a bucket list. They're also, I've been to the Vatican Museum. It was even amazing. Yeah. I mean, talk about holders of the truth.
Yep. Yeah, there's reported, the people that have talked, just stacks of documents that are just, nothing's cataloged. They don't even know what, there's not a lot of people even know what's there, because it's just, I mean, think Indiana Jones and the Lost Ark, which, saw that where they just boxed it up and they just wheeled it in there and dropped it off. It's like that in the Vatican, supposedly. That's not like this nice library where everything's cataloged. It's like they have some of that, but there is just, just miles of stuff that's just down there that's unknown.
Yeah. Craig, what are we bringing next? Julie says, great show, guys. Looking forward to what you bring next. Next is
Nazi occult.
Yes, September 1st.
Yeah, we're going to be talking about, it's not just literally, it's like a cult around the Nazis. It was the Nazi fascination with various of the occult. I mean, I just talked about Indiana Jones and the Lost Ark, hey, go figure. That was that was an actual thing that was being undertaken. I mean, here you think about a power that's trying to take over the world, but yet they're sending massive amounts of manpower, material, and they're all over the place, literally digging in the desert, digging all around the world, trying to find these artifacts of legend, not because Hitler was just some crazy guy that thought if he held this spear that suddenly he was going to become God incarnate. No, they knew that these things actually had some sort of, property to them. I mean, there's talks like when we talked about the Ark, the Ark of the Covenant, could have been an ancient device that actually, was able to generate power, and it was able to. So you have something that generates power on its own, who needs fuel? Your supply chain's taken care of. Yeah, you literally have, a 1940s, power source where you can go anywhere without stopping. I mean, it's these, and that was their fascination. It's like, why were they so fascinated? What was it that drove this machine that was hell bent on world takeover to like do this massive deviation and turn into this archaeological arm. It was really crazy.
Laura, that's what I was going to say. He was in Antarctica, which could explain through our Red Thread collective work, and Lori knows this too, and Tanya. If you're in Antarctica, you can get to the moon through a portal. That's a pretty good theory. That there's a direct portal between the moon and Antarctica. So if that was a base, that would take you to the moon and vice versa. So we're going to cover a lot of that. I want to talk about Wewelsburg Castle. I want to talk about the Black Sun, Himmler, the SS rituals, all of that. That's all being.
It'll be a good show.
Yeah, that's all being folded into my book. So okay, so let's continue though with the Voynich. I think we're going to build. I think we're going to build a tapestry as you and I go along, clicking off these shows.
I'd love it.
I think the same pieces and go, hey, you remember that episode where we talked about that? Here's this guy, and and we're already doing that. We're already blowing Roger Bacon out into his own show. So I love it because this is what my series is about. So let's see. Yeah,
we got to get to the sections. We haven't even really talked about the sections of the book yet.
No, I know. We're going to stay with it for a while. And folks, if you have to go, I noticed that a lot of people leave after an hour, but I hope you go back and watch that last half hour so that we spend. I think people are, which is good. So let's, I think we got, let's do that. You want to talk about the sections, Craig?
Yeah, I mean, there's no particular order. There's botanical, astronomical, astrological, there's the biological section, cosmological, the pharmaceutical, and then what they're calling recipes. So they've got those, what they've identified as what they think is six sections. But it's one of those you can clearly see, like one of the ones for me, like the astrological, you can clearly see like one, it definitely looks like it's Pisces because it looks like a fish. Yep. The other one, they didn't really, in a lot of the research, nobody really brought it up, but I'll put it here, maybe it's just because I'm biased, but it definitely looks like it's Libra.
Yeah.
Because it definitely looks like, I'll bring it right here, that's this one. As you can see, to me, that looks like a scale.
Uh-huh.
And that's, Libra is known as a scale. It's this other one, I think is right next to it. It almost looks like a cat. You have a couple of them. There's one, it looks like a man holding something like almost like a wand or a star.
Right.
And that's that. Tell me if people can see
that. That drew my eye as well. And then some of these guys, being academics in their own little world, they get nitpicky. Oh, it's two fish for Pisces, a hunter with a crossbow for Sagittarius. But if you are talking about parallel universes, or you're talking about different timelines, plus these are interpretations, right? The ancients were looking at the stars and they were seeing patterns and they were basing information on them. So it's kind of like looking at clouds. So like Lori says, some of the pictures are most definitely the zodiac, and that's not disputed. They talk about Aries, they talk about Aquarius, Capricorn, and they think that there are a couple that are missing, but they're on missing pages.
Yep, so that could be some of the ones that are missing.
But think about it. You need the recipes. You need the incantations or the spells. You need the ingredients. You need the moon and sun and star phases to be in the right place. And then if there's this, like the ladies were talking about in the chat room, granny magic, right? Or kitchen witch magic, all that kind of stuff. That is accounted for by these women. And I think that the figures, Craig, my feeling is, why go into detail creating hundreds of these female figures when the female figures represent either numerically or how they're grouped? Because sometimes they're grouped within geometric figures. You just want to get them on paper because how each of them individually look is not important.
Yeah, there doesn't seem to be a lot of detail. Some... they seem to have similar ones like, the rosy cheek, they seem to have that coloration on the cheeks, but there doesn't really seem to be any particular order to like hair, facial features, anything like that with the figures. Yeah. It is the commonality is naked women, green water.
Yeah.
the green pools. And so, I mean, they had blue. So why they didn't use blue, we don't know. But it was specifically anything that's with water is green in this
And
aspect.
if you were making a copy, which is my theory, that this is a finished project of a work in progress, you would have a template for the women that maybe an apprentice or something like that would draw all those women. And so you would have a template that you would draw from. And after a while, you could draw it from your mind, and it would only be slightly, depending if you were rushing or you lost your concentration or something like that. So I think that accounts for all that. You want to talk about, as we're at the 1 hour mark, do you want to talk about the cryptography and all? Do you have other stuff?
No. If you want, yeah, go right into that. I mean, I think you went into that a lot. I think probably more than I did.
Yeah, because we talked about the recipes, and I think that covers it.
Mm-hmm.
Although I would definitely say, folks, go to www.voynich.nu. Now, this book, and I don't know, a digital copy could actually be more useful than a book. But I think, Craig, I think this book was $24 something. Wasn't too bad.
$24.99.
Yeah, it was
free
the
shipping.
cheapest of all of them.
And it's a really nice book. I mean, hardcover. I mean, it's a really, really nice book.
Yeah, good scholarship in the beginning. So we have to give credit for some of this to Stephen Skinner, Rafat Prinka, and Renee Zandenbergen. So, my mind is spinning too, Laura. It's been a whirlwind like 3 weeks since Craig introduced me to this. What does Tanya say? Go ahead.
No, I was just saying, isn't that crazy? It's just one of those things you don't really think about. And then once you go, you're just like, oh my God, you're just like, it branches off and you realize how many people have actually touched this thing.
Yeah.
And it's just, my conspiracy theory side is that some of those missing pages are intentionally missing. Like those might be the keys. That
I believe that.
And that this might, the actual true thing that this is about isn't really, it's not to be known or, ever or of yet. And I think that might be some of the pages that are missing that may have that cipher key, that may have whatever is that key piece to breaking it all open. Now, but it'd be one of those, wouldn't that be such a letdown if we finally break it? It is, all it is just a recipe on how to, cleanse yourself.
Yeah, I don't believe that for a second. Although the one part that they did decipher. Now, okay, let's talk about that. But I just wanted to say, Folio 66 is possibly a table of contents, which you don't put in the middle of a book.
Yes.
So that could be a page that's out of order. So they decipher one little part and they go, oh man, it's just a goat liver salve. It's been around forever. Everybody knows about it. What if they've deciphered other parts? Like the Fatima letters and things like that, right? They know what some of this stuff says, but they're not telling it. They only tell you parts of it. They tell you the mundane parts. So I think there were 3 parts to the Fatima letters, and they told everybody 2 because they were fairly mundane. Or they prophesied things that had already happened, like World War II or whatnot. So, so definitely, go out and get the book, I think. So Tanya says, funny you say granny magic. Her grandmother, Donnath, just really quickly, was a channeler, tarot cards, automatic writer, Ouija board. We have a whole box full of her notebooks. And Tanya rightfully says a lot of this looks similar. So we're going to do some comparisons. And
wouldn't that be crazy if some of that stuff is there? Because then, I think Julie, she said that almost in the beginning of the show where she talked about, I wonder if it's something that's, you basically you're almost. I don't want to say. I'd have to look back at her comment. I think she said something like almost like divination. Like it was. You were being told. You're basically like auto script or something. You're being told the stuff at the same time, which would lend itself to a supernatural, apparent, paranormal side of inspiration, which is kind of the light work, which the angelic script that definitely could be something to it, which wouldn't that be a fascination for the Jesuits, so that this is an actual conduit to the divine, and thus we must keep this to ourselves and not for the masses, and thus these pages must be locked away.
Right. And then the Catholics, who are even the guardians of the guardians, if you will, the gatekeepers of the gatekeepers, go, no,
Mm-hmm.
no, 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 we don't even trust you Jesuits with this, because
Yep.
this knowledge is true power. If you're getting actual angelic messages, and ironically, I don't want to give away my Stanton Chronicles series, but the actual cipher key has to do with the angelic script that was delivered to Joseph of the coat of many colors in his
Mm-hmm.
dreams. And without that, so everybody's trying to get their hands on this stuff. I love that I love that you all are so with us. Craig, we thought this was going to be a winner, this collaboration, and it seems to be. My grandmother did automatic writing, and I've thought about this through the whole show. There you go. So we'll have to look at that.
Oh yeah.
Then we have the sticks drawn to water, healing stones and plants. Absolutely. I would love to know what Edgar Casey would have channeled about this. He may have. He may have been tuned into the Voynich manuscript and the writings of Emanuel Swedenborg and the writings of John Dee. If you were to find evidence of one, then I think you would find evidence for all of those. Those are the major sources of these prophecies, along with people like Joseph in the Bible. Lots of divine feminine, absolutely. So definitely a church no. Ain't that the truth?
Well, that kind of goes into, we've talked about that before too, where I'm a firm believer Mary Magdalene was a pivotal figure in the early church. This is me, I'm agnostic, but if you go with the dogma, Christ was I believe that he was involved with Mary Magdalene. So it in more than just, hey, what's up, girl? I believe it was, involved with Mary Magdalene. And so this, and that she was supposed to be a key figure. So one of these things, the early church, that's one of the real things why they had to hide this information. They had to bury this stuff, is because you can't subjugate, you can't control something that is made, to be, part, the key, one of the keys to the thing. I mean, you can't control and also have, celebrate. You can't do both. You got it. So the best way to do is just, dang those women, you doomed us all. You bit the apple. Now we've all suffered to languish in sin. When you actually look at some of the things, this is probably not the case in any way. And so this would be an actual threat that they'd want to keep hidden anyway, because if it is something that shows the power that, females have in these aspects, it's like, you can't have that, because now nobody's going to come to me and give me their gold. And like I said, sing my little song, stand up and down. I've probably offended a few Catholics now, but hey, that's going to,
I really think, you got Mary Mater. So how do you disempower a woman? You make an immaculate conception that God just put it in there and she had nothing to do with it. The angel comes down and says, you're expecting a gift, deal with it. There's no agency there. And then Mary Magdalene, absolutely. I do think that's one thing that Holy Blood, Holy Grail, as controversial and full of bunk as that book is, and I'm about 3/4 of the way up through it now. She was probably wealthy. She may have also been the sister of Lazarus. And Lazarus's death and resurrection was almost certainly a Nicene ritual that we see the echoes of in Rosicrucianism and in through Freemasonry. So the symbolic death, she was the first one to the tomb, on and on and on. The salve that she uses is very, very expensive. So she's not a prostitute out making dimes and buying expensive, salves to put on bombs, to put on Jesus's feet with, so, and some of the disciples are pretty upset about how Jesus does that. And then someone said that they were married and he preached in the temple. And according to rabbinical law, you had to be married to preach in the temple. So it's all over the place. So I don't think you're any Catholic who brings any thought to their Catholicism is not going to disagree.
Oh,
with
I was more referring to my saying that they just stand up, sing their little song, and up and down, up and down. I said, yeah. I go. I probably just offended a few Catholics, but hey, I'm sorry.
No, that's the old joke: up, down, knees, feet, knees,
Uh,
feet, ass, knees, feet, ass. Put some money in the basket. Yeah, no, I
yep.
did it for years. So, yeah, supposedly she funded all the routes for Jesus to heal the neighbors, and also too. And I know it's hard to. We're just gonna go with it. It's fine. The wedding where he turns the water into wine.
Mm-hmm.
If you break that wedding down and you look at the text and you look at the power dynamics between the players, it was his wedding.
He was a groomsman.
I do believe that. He was the groom. Yeah, he was the groom. So
I mean,
it's very
you can. It's a whole different rabbit hole you can go to because, turning water into wine is literally a magical act.
Yeah.
And so it go through here. I mean, resurrecting Lazarus, that's necromancy to a T. You're resurrecting the dead, bringing it back to life. I mean, you have all these things. It's like you literally are doing it and you're turning around and telling me this is forbidden. You are not allowed to do this yourself. And you're like, I'm a little,
right.
As the kids say these days, I'm a little sus.
Right. And Jesus's mom comes and like, why would she be invited to the wedding? And she says, son, don't be stingy, like break out the good wine. And the groom is the only guy who could make that decision. So it's interesting. So I'm just putting these comments up here. Those of you listening on Radio on Wednesday nights and Patriot Radio on Friday nights, go check out the native content with the video and the comments. And folks, those of you who get frustrated with the comments, we're streaming to 3 different platforms. It's working out very well for us and our reach. So go to those other platforms and see what people are saying there.
Yeah, definitely.
That's my thing. Yes. So Jessica says, Mary Magdalene, OG Granny Witch. There you go. There's a book. Absolutely. And there have been some books written on exactly that, Jessica. I have them. I'll have to tell people about it. Just say it, Joey. I'm saying it. Just do it. Okay, I'll do it. I don't care. We're saying it. We're putting it out there. But I just want to say, because it's 11 after, let's talk a little bit about the lack of awareness about the Hippocratic. Yeah, ignorance truly is bliss for many. Let's say that. But cryptographers. Yes. Now, again, Ramon is going to be very hooked into this. My dad was a cryptographer. I came this close. I was accepted into and I had to back out because of a woman who was nice and angelic, and she's my ex-wife now. But a man named William Friedman in 1948 gathered 16 U.S. cryptographers, 1944 rather. So we're still fighting tooth and nail, World War II. And these cryptographers in their spare time are trying to crack the Voynich. That's interesting. These dudes were breaking Japanese codes. These dudes were working with IBM, early pioneers of computers and code, and they're working on the Voynich.
Kind of a little key there too. IBM was involved with the Nazis.
Yeah. Oh, everybody was involved with the Nazis.
So I said, so there is. So I mean, what are the odds that our next show is about Nazi occult? So so that's the thing. What is the possibility that this may have some tie to some of those things too? And the fact that while we're doing the same thing, while they're digging in the Egyptian desert, trying to find artifacts, we're over here trying to crack a mysterious codex at the same time, doing the same thing. So obviously, there's something. Powers that be believed that there was something to this, and so they were. I mean, like I said, we're in a major world war, and we are devoting manpower and resources into cracking codes, finding objects. So yeah, continue. I'm sorry about my deviation.
No. I think that was awesome. But you know what? In all of the research I did, the Nazis are nowhere to be found when it comes to this book. Is that by we don't want to stain it with the Nazis, or
I don't know? It just dawned when you were mentioning the IBM. I'm just like, what are the odds? Because that's the connection. I mean, they said they were working there too. I mean, so yeah.
Yeah. So in 1962-63, RCA comes in, the big electronics technology company, and they say, we are going to fund a study on this thing. Friedman starts to put together a 2-year study, and RCA pulls the plug. See what I did there? RCA
Yep.
pulled the plug. Who told them to pull the plug? You know what I mean? Who told RCA, don't get involved, don't fund this work? So 1950, the British get involved. John Tiltman, a British intelligence officer who was attached to Bletchley Park. So that was the whole Enigma code and all that stuff. Alan Turing, that's all Bletchley Park. A guy named Prescott Currier from the U.S. Navy joins forces with Tillman. Not unusual in and of itself. The Americans and the Brits worked together, but he was a cryptologist who had also been on loan to Bletchley. So they're working with the alphanumeric codes, also two distinct dialects embedded in, and that's why they think two different writers. And how you have a code in a dialect is a little behind my tiny mind. Then I want to jump to 1991, James Gilligley. He was a computer scientist, chess-playing programmer from the 1970s. Now, guys, maybe, Craig, we could do something on this someday. There's the Kryptos sculpture at CIA headquarters. Only 3 of the 4 panels have been cracked. And this guy, Gilligley, was the guy who cracked 3 of those panels. The greatest minds in cryptography and cipher work worked on those panels. And this guy was trying to crack the Voynich manuscript. So, and then, 2012, I said, a wound plaster made from goat's liver. That's the only thing that they've copped to so far. Yeah, and Laurie agrees. No Nazi connections. It screams in its absence.
Yeah, it's one of those. It just, I don't. Like I said, I'm not teasing that it's like the Nazis were involved. It's one of those. I just have a feeling like this might have also been information that somebody from there would have been, heavily interested in obtaining as well. Because let's say it is a healing directions on how to make medicine that can heal people. Well, now we can have. They were always in there for their super soldiers.
Yeah,
they wanted these things. So what if this thing had that medicinal ability to where this root combined with this, the alchemy? If you did this and this and this, now you have a super potion for healing, instant heal, bam, you're out.
Right.
You're out. I'm like, that's gonna make you superior on the battlefield.
Yep.
Rub this salve on that wound, and all of a sudden, just like in Indiana Jones, you see it starting to bubble and the bullet dissolves, and next thing you know, your bullet wound's gone.
I don't know if it was Tanya or someone else or numerous people, but you have to figure that some of these plants had hallucinogenic properties. So then you could use these plants to then, so you get information from the angelic, the Enochian, the extraterrestrial. Everybody knows from talking to Reverend Carter on the show numerous times. Craig and I have had the honor. He's done so on his show as well. There are overlaps. Angels, aliens. There's overlap there. You're talking a common language. So, that's what I had for cryptological. So you wanna take us to the outro?
Yeah, I'm all over the place right now.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. It's kind of like final thoughts for me. I mean, it just really is. I am a believer that, what they're calling Voynichese, Voyniches, it's just that it is an actual language. One of those things. I don't believe that myself, just based on it, is really over the top if it's a hoax. I mean, that is a lot of effort, a lot of stuff to go into if you're just simply trying to fool somebody. I mean, one page like that would be, okay, hey, it's a hoax, this thing, but to craft an entire work is something. I mean, I think it was one of those mysteries. I think somebody eventually is going to get it. I don't know if I buy that it's a women's health journal, that's its sole purpose is just, about women's health. But at the same time, it's really amazing how it's all combined. I mean, just all the women in the baths, the astrology, just because it definitely shows the ties to, you're definitely looking to the sky, the time it is, the calendar. So there's a lot going to it. I mean, but it definitely has the botany side, definitely has what it looks like there. I mean, I can definitely see where the inference would come from those.
Right.
But for me, I mean, I think you're right about Folio 66. that could be like a table of contents for a section, laying it out. But no, I said we'll look into that. That was just when he said IBM, that was just me. It made me think. It's like, I wonder if there is a connection. Like the Nazis were trying to look into this at the same time.
Yeah.
And we just didn't. We wouldn't have found. They're not exactly going to be calling it the Voynich manuscript over in Nazi Germany. So it could have just really been some coded reference in a journal that they were looking into it, and it could have actually been that manuscript. So we don't know.
No, it absolutely, I think, could be. So I want to get the woman's name right. Edith Sherwood, same as Sherwood Fars. She claimed to have identified 124 of the 126 plants. She was not on her own, though. There was an ancient herbal specialist named Sergio Torresella, and he said that many of them were consistent with a 1460s manuscript. Now, the problem there is 1460s is past the revised carbon dating. So that manuscript was actually copying the Voynich. So that doesn't help us that much. You know what I'm saying?
No, yeah, no.
Yeah. She says that she deciphered 111 names. But most others agree that maybe they can identify 15 of those plants. So that would be an interesting thing to do the everyday and mundane, but also mix in parts and pieces. Maybe that was part of the cipher.
Yeah, it definitely could have been. Because we've all known the masters, when they did their stuff, they were playing multi-dimensional chess.
Yeah.
They weren't playing the 2D, like we, looking down at the board and doing these things. They had, this plant could be connected to this plant over here, which is connected to this. Like you said, it could have been multiple codes within codes, and that could have been also part of the reason why it seems a little disjointed in some areas. But that also could have been by grand design. But until we actually get that physical key, that's going to be the hardest part of figuring this out. Until then, it's still just going to be, whether it is a women's journal, whether it's just a simple book on, look at the cool plants I found while I was taking my journey around Europe. It's still the fascinating thing of why it was written in a code that potentially nobody was going to know how to read it.
Yeah.
So I said it's on the shelf now. Thanks to you. Appreciate it.
And you're welcome. I appreciate you taking this journey with me, because all the signs are that this is powerful. This is a powerful energy to it. So speaking of which, next week, I'm back solo. I'm going to have a gentleman named Lester Velez. He's going to be talking about his group. Folks, if you are interested in abduction stories, these are the kind of abduction stories that make you go, either I'm in or out. Either these people are lying, or I need to invest in this. The book blew me away. My book review, I'll post a link to the book review when I create. September 1st, Craig and I, Nazi Occults. September 8th, Tanya and Lori are doing readings. I'm going to have, we're going to go to sort of the spiritual side, women's empowerment, with a woman named Sandy Hart. She does a sort of multi-religious women's empowerment. She's hooked into the 12 grandmothers of all the tribes that are together. Sandy's going to be on the show, so come back for that. September 22nd, Constance Victoria Briggs has written a moon encyclopedia. Craig, we all did our homework for RTC, but there is stuff in there. I will tell you, they talk about, some astronauts saw this. Every single Gemini, Mercury, Apollo mission, somebody saw, heard, recorded, described something. Every time we got near the moon or on the moon, there was some kind of ET occurrence.
Really?
So tune in for that one, guys. It's a great encyclopedia. Then I'll be doing archetypes. We have Mike and CL. You and I are coming back to celebrate that dark day when the Templars were all arrested, where the curse of Friday the 13th comes from.
Yep. That's gonna be cool. Like I said, right at the when we go live, it'll be just going from the 13th into the Friday. So I said it's just kind of, so they'll all just be kind of like a mat right there. So it's kind of cool.
Yeah, so that's going to be neat. And Emily Mittermeier, another one of our RTC members, she just did a journey down the extraterrestrial highway. She's an absolutely great photographer. She's going to basically do a travelogue with a PowerPoint presentation about her travels. So that's going to be excellent. October 27th, Wes Roberts returns to the show. I'm reading his books now. You and I do Roger Bacon on November 3rd. And then November 10th, Mark Fiorentino. And then before we take a break for Thanksgiving, we'll come up with something special. We'll see what's waiting. So thank you all so much. We've pushed an hour and 24 minutes. Yeah, definitely revisiting the moon, I think, is going to be amazing. I will repost the RTC show on the moon a couple days before that show so people can get a piece of that. Craig, last thoughts? You want to plug what's going on over on Three Beards?
Next show, Wednesday, we're going to be talking about the Kecksburg, Pennsylvania UFO bell crash.
Nice.
So we'll be talking about, we'll have Brian M. Bowden, Carlito Castro, and Tom Cardos. The boys will all be back. And what I said, we're going to talk about that one and just probably just overall, UFO chat, so just don't do too many of those.
I'll be tuning in on that one. I'll be in the shadows.
But then, like I said, everybody support, like I said, hey, anything, subscribe, because Facebook has that, the stars, anything you do like that really helps out. We really, everybody appreciates it. We could put it to good use in the shows.
Cool. Awesome. And as you and I evolve this, we're going to come out, I think maybe a Patreon, maybe we'll do that. We'll design some merch. And I think this has got legs.
A tease, real quick, a tease.
Yeah, go ahead.
For the new intro. For anybody that remembers the old HBO intro where it would kind of, the feature presentation, I'm working on something like that. It's not going to be digital creation. I'm actually going to be filming, doing some flyovers. So I'm going to be working on creating the models of some UFOs and doing some stuff. So that's a little tease on what's in the plans for it. So like I said, wish me luck. Wish me luck.
I think we'll get our son Jeremy to get on a new piece of music for it, and it'll be awesome. So, brother, thank you so much. I love that the audience was so involved tonight. Let's keep this going, guys. We'll see you next week with Les Velez. Join us into the outer realms where the paranormal and the supernatural, Craig, become
the normal and the natural. I don't know.
That's right. I think we're getting there.
I got it. Did I get it?
Got it. You had it.
Thank God.
Good night, everyone. Peace. Check it out on Wednesday nights. Always
so much pressure. So much pressure.
10 o'clock on ERT Radio. Friday nights, 8 p.m. On Patriot Radio. Patriot 1776 Radio. Honored. And Craig, you are on ERT and as Patriot when?
Mm-hmm.
When? Tell them when.
Yep. Oh, hey, what happened there?
Yeah.
Facebook tried to... I'm on the same thing. It was right after you on Wednesdays, 11 p.m. ish. Or so, yeah.
Nice.
So I said we
follow that. When are you on Patriot?
I believe Thursdays
at
10 o'clock. 10 o'clock. I believe.
Nice.
I believe it is.
So watch us, get a cup of coffee, and go back and get some Three Beard goodness revisited.
That's right.
So peace, everyone.
Good night.